Daniel Carter had everything a man could ask for: wealth, success, and a stunning wife who seemed devoted to him. As the CEO of a thriving tech company, he was respected in the business world for his sharp mind and strategic thinking. His empire had been built from the ground up, and every decision he made was calculated. He had married Olivia 10 years ago, and their life together was one many envied. She was beautiful, elegant, and carried herself with grace at every social event they attended. Their marriage appeared flawless, a picture of stability and happiness. Living in a sprawling estate in an exclusive neighborhood, Daniel ensured that Olivia had every comfort she desired. Luxurious cars, designer clothes, and extravagant vacations were all at her disposal. She never had to worry about anything. Yet there was one aspect of Daniel's life that was unavoidable: his work. His company required frequent travel, meetings with international clients, and late nights at the office. Although he made an effort to spend quality time with Olivia, there were long stretches when he was away, trusting that their bond was strong enough to withstand the distance. Concerned for her safety, Daniel had hired a personal bodyguard, Ethan Brooks, 3 years ago. Ethan was a former military operative, highly trained, and came with a flawless record. His presence ensured that Olivia was never alone, especially when Daniel traveled. Over time, Ethan became a familiar figure in their household, always standing at a respectful distance, never overstepping his boundaries. Daniel appreciated his professionalism and believed his wife was in good hands. For a long time, everything seemed normal. Olivia attended charity events, managed household affairs, and indulged in her hobbies. She had always enjoyed an active social life, often meeting friends for lunch or spending afternoons shopping. But as the years passed, Daniel began to notice small but unusual changes. Olivia, once eager to talk about her day, had become more reserved. Her phone was always in her hand, and she was quick to hide the screen when he entered the room. She had started going to the gym regularly, even though she had never shown interest in fitness before. When he asked, she brushed it off as a new lifestyle choice. At first, Daniel dismissed his concerns. He knew that his constant absence must have taken a toll on their relationship, and perhaps Olivia was simply finding ways to keep herself occupied. But then, there were the unexplained late-night outings. She would say she was visiting a friend, but when Daniel casually followed up, her stories were inconsistent. She had also started dressing differently, subtly at first but noticeable enough. What unsettled Daniel the most was Olivia's behavior around Ethan. While the bodyguard remained professional, Daniel sensed a level of familiarity between them that hadn't been there before. There were brief glances, moments of hesitation in their interactions, and an ease that seemed out of place. Though there was no direct evidence of wrongdoing, Daniel's instincts told him that something was amiss. For the first time in his marriage, he began to doubt the trust he had placed in his wife. Daniel couldn't ignore the feeling that something was wrong. The signs were subtle, but once he started paying attention, they became impossible to overlook. Olivia had always been affectionate, even during his busiest work days, but now there was a distance between them. She no longer waited up for him when he returned late from the office, and the warmth in her voice had been replaced with indifference. It wasn't just the change in her attitude, it was her actions that troubled him the most. She had developed new routines, ones that didn't seem to fit with the lifestyle she had always enjoyed. The frequent gym sessions were the first thing that stood out. Olivia had never shown much interest in exercise before, yet now she was spending hours at the gym, always at odd times. When Daniel asked about it, she gave vague answers, dismissing his concerns as paranoia. Then there were the sudden shopping trips, lasting longer than usual, sometimes ending without her bringing anything home. The secrecy surrounding her phone became even more apparent. Olivia, who once casually left her phone on the kitchen counter or living room table, now carried it with her everywhere. She kept it on silent mode and seemed on edge whenever a message came through. One evening, Daniel happened to glance at her screen while she was scrolling, and though she quickly turned it away, he caught a glimpse of a text that read, "Same place tonight?" She brushed it off when he asked, claiming it was a conversation with a friend, but something about her reaction didn't sit right with him. Ethan's presence in their lives also started to feel different. As a bodyguard, his job required him to be around, but Daniel noticed that Olivia was requesting his presence more often. She insisted that he accompany her even when there was no apparent need for security. Whether it was a quick trip to a boutique or a dinner with friends, Ethan was always close by. Daniel recalled an incident where Olivia had twisted her ankle at a party. Instead of asking for her husband's help, she had instinctively turned to Ethan, who reacted immediately, carrying her to the car while she clung to him. At the time, Daniel had dismissed it as a natural reaction, but looking back, it felt like something more. Doubt started creeping into Daniel's mind. He had spent years trusting Olivia without question, but now that trust felt fragile. The problem was that he had no concrete proof, only suspicions. He told himself that he was imagining things, that maybe he was over-analyzing harmless interactions. But deep down, he knew his instincts had never failed him before. Unwilling to confront Olivia without evidence, Daniel decided to take a different approach. He reached out to his head of security and discreetly asked him to monitor Ethan's activities. It wasn't an easy decision, but he needed answers. Within days, troubling reports started coming in. Olivia and Ethan frequently left the house, together without a clear explanation. Daniel realized that his worst fears might soon become reality. Daniel's mind was consumed with suspicion, but he remained outwardly composed. If Olivia and Ethan were truly betraying him, he needed undeniable proof before taking action. The reports from his security team confirmed what he already feared. Olivia and Ethan were spending an unusual amount of time together, often leaving the estate without a clear destination. There were no immediate signs of wrongdoing, but their movements were secretive, carefully planned. Daniel knew that if he wanted the truth, he had to act carefully. An opportunity presented itself when he planned a week-long business trip to Asia. Normally, Olivia would express some concern about his absence, but this time she barely reacted. Instead, she seemed distracted, almost eager for him to leave. It was enough to solidify Daniel's decision. He wouldn't actually go on the trip. Instead, he would stay behind, watching from the shadows. On the night of his supposed departure, Daniel left the house as planned, bags in hand, and instructed his driver to take him to the airport. Once out of sight, he switched cars and checked into a nearby hotel. From there, he accessed his home's security feeds remotely, watching Olivia's movements. For the first few hours, nothing unusual happened. She went about her routine as if everything was normal. But just past midnight, her behavior changed. She stepped outside, looking around cautiously before getting into her car. Moments later, Ethan followed, slipping into the driver's seat. Daniel's heart pounded as he watched them drive off together. He wasted no time contacting the private investigator he had hired a few days earlier, instructing him to follow their car. The investigator kept a safe distance, tracking them through city streets until they reached a secluded villa on the outskirts of town. The house was small, hidden behind tall trees, far from prying eyes. Olivia and Ethan entered without hesitation. Hours passed, and they didn't leave. Daniel's stomach churned with the realization that whatever was happening inside wasn't innocent. The next morning, the investigator provided him with photos, images of Olivia and Ethan embracing, sharing intimate moments that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was real. But as Daniel processed the pain of his wife's affair, a far more disturbing discovery surfaced. The investigator, while digging deeper, found records of suspicious bank transactions. Olivia had been moving money from their shared accounts into an offshore account under a name Daniel didn't recognize. The amounts were significant, enough to indicate something far more sinister than just an affair. Determined to uncover the full truth, Daniel requested a deeper investigation. Within days, it became clear Olivia and Ethan weren't just lovers. They were planning something far more dangerous. A shocking email exchange revealed their true intentions. Olivia wasn't just betraying Daniel emotionally, she was preparing to betray him financially as well. And if the messages were to be believed, they didn't just want his money, they wanted him out of the picture, permanently. Daniel sat in his hotel room, staring at the damning evidence laid out before him. Olivia's affair was painful enough, but the financial transactions pointed to something far more dangerous. The private investigator had uncovered a disturbing truth. Olivia and Ethan weren't just planning to run away together. They were orchestrating a scheme to take everything from him. Hidden bank accounts, forged documents, and secret meetings all pointed to a carefully crafted plan. What troubled Daniel the most was the final piece of evidence, an email thread between Olivia and Ethan discussing his accident. The messages were vague but chilling. Phrases like, "It has to look natural," and "We can't afford mistakes," left little room for doubt. His wife and the man he had trusted to protect her were plotting his death. Daniel's mind raced. Every moment he spent away from home meant he was in greater danger. If they believed he was out of the country, they might act sooner than planned. He needed to take control before it was too late. Instead of confronting Olivia, Daniel decided to set a trap. He worked with his head of security and law enforcement, sharing everything he had uncovered. The plan was simple. Let Olivia and Ethan believe they were succeeding while quietly gathering enough evidence to catch them in the act. The authorities advised him to act normal, to not let them suspect anything until the moment was right. It was the hardest thing Daniel had ever done, but his survival depended on it. He returned home the next evening, pretending as though nothing was amiss. Olivia greeted him with forced enthusiasm, her smile practiced but hollow. If she was nervous about her plan, she didn't show it. Ethan, as always, remained professional, his expression unreadable. Daniel played along, acting exhausted from his trip, mentioning how good it was to be back. Olivia nodded, pouring him a glass of wine before excusing herself to another room. As he sat in his study, pretending to unwind, his security team monitored the hidden cameras placed around the house. It didn't take long for Olivia to confirm his worst fears. She stepped onto the back patio, phone in hand, and made a call. Her voice was low, but the microphones picked up every word. "It's happening tonight. Be ready." That was all Daniel needed. Law enforcement was already on high alert, waiting for the right moment. Hours passed, and the house grew quiet. Then, just as expected, Olivia entered the kitchen, carefully measuring something into a glass of wine, his wine. Ethan stood by, watching. It was a scene straight from a crime novel, only this time, Daniel was the intended victim. Before Olivia could carry out her plan, officers stormed into the house, catching her and Ethan off guard. Olivia's face drained of color as she realized she had been caught. Ethan reached for something, perhaps a weapon, but was tackled before he could act. Within seconds, the plan they had spent months perfecting had crumbled before their eyes. What they hadn't expected was that the man they thought they had fooled had been one step ahead the entire time. Chaos erupted in the Carter estate as officers restrained Olivia and Ethan. Olivia's face twisted in shock, her carefully constructed plan falling apart in an instant. Ethan struggled against the officers, his body tense with panic. But there was no escape. Within moments, they were both handcuffed and separated. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching as the people he had once trusted were exposed for who they truly were. His wife, the woman he had loved for a decade, had not only betrayed him, but had also plotted to take his life. The man he had hired to protect her had become her partner in crime. As officers searched the house, they found the poisoned wine glass Olivia had prepared, confirming their intent to murder Daniel that very night. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Emails, financial transactions, and now an attempted poisoning in real time. There was no way out for them. Olivia, who had always carried herself with grace and charm, now looked fragile, her mask of confidence shattered. Ethan, once disciplined and composed, sat silently, his jaw clenched as if calculating his next move. At the police station, during questioning, Olivia refused to speak at first. But when she realized the extent of the evidence against her, she broke. She claimed it had never been about the money, that she had fallen in love with Ethan and felt trapped in her marriage to Daniel. She insisted that Ethan had been the one to suggest eliminating Daniel, painting herself as a victim of manipulation. Ethan, however, had a different story. He accused Olivia of being the mastermind, saying she had planned everything, from the affair to the offshore accounts to Daniel's murder. Their love, once so strong, crumbled under pressure as they turned on each other in a desperate attempt to save themselves. In court, both were found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and fraud. Olivia, who had tried to play the role of a grieving, neglected wife, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Ethan, who had once been a respected security professional, faced the same fate. Their betrayal had cost them everything. For Daniel, the nightmare was finally over, but the scars remained. He had built his life around trust, only to learn that the two people closest to him had been plotting his downfall. In the months that followed, he focused on rebuilding, not just his business, but his sense of security. He surrounded himself with people he could trust and made sure his company remained stronger than ever. Despite everything, he refused to let bitterness consume him. He had been given a second chance, a chance to live the life Olivia and Ethan had tried to steal from him. Their story became a cautionary tale, a reminder that betrayal often comes from the ones closest to you. In the end, justice had prevailed, and Daniel Carter had survived the ultimate deception.